This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
What's good, folks? Family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people. A mid alert to another episode of Disguise Coverage, the only podcast that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin. Sponsored by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino and presented by the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. That is One Pipe Pizza. Find the online menu in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you're listening to this show on. I'm your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro 2_ANT. In tonight's episode of Disguise Coverage, pretty straightforward as the episode description says, and as the title indicates, we are headed into the final week of the preseason for the Buffalo Bills. They take on the Carolina Panthers this Saturday at 1 o'clock. I'm pretty certain of. We'll also be doing a post-game episode of Disguise Coverage immediately following that Bills versus Panthers game on Saturday. So I should probably figure out what time it happens at. But as the past couple of weeks, we've done kind of who and what to watch for heading into the games. Kendall Mursky has joined me for those shows, and this week he is not. But I thought instead of doing that kind of preview and who and what to watch for, I thought it made more sense to do a roster projection for this episode. A couple of people have hit me on Twitter and in the show here. Major shout out to Ted Truver on Twitter for asking me if I was going to be doing a roster prediction show or projection show. And this is kind of going to end up being like that. Just with all the injuries that have hit the Bills, and I don't want to make it sound super dramatic because a lot of them aren't dramatic in terms of the players they happen to or in terms of the length of the injuries themselves. But what those injuries have done is muddy the roster projection for this team because of the players they've happened to, the positions they've happened at, and then also tying into that the potential timelines for those injuries, which again just kind of muddies the whole situation and puts it into a spot where it makes how many players they were going to keep at certain positions just a little harder to decipher, a little harder to project. And again, tying that into what we've seen in these first couple of preseason games, what we've seen in training camp, tying it all together. I thought it'll be a fun episode to dive into the roster projection in terms of risers, in terms of fallers. We're going to be diving into some game tape tonight, which is a very fun thing. And we're going to look at some specific examples from several of the players that we're going to be talking about tonight to kind of put some things into perspective for you folks, and using all of that again to put in conjunction with the injuries, with certain timelines, what it all means, why it matters, and all of that kind of stuff. Scott coming in, first comment here on the show, and Scott says, Buffalo Joe, yeah, we're going to be talking about Joe Andreessen tonight, who I don't want to get too much ahead of myself, but he had a legitimately good football game against Pittsburgh. It's not just, man, it's awesome because he went to UB, and man, it's even more awesome because he grew up in Buffalo and all this stuff. It's not just like a nice, comforting, warm story. He legitimately had a good game. I don't think, I think a lot of people kind of recognize it too in terms of the hyperbole in which he's being spoken about. And I do think, we do need more of a sample size for him, and we're going to talk about what kind of his path to the roster or making the 53 man looks like in this episode. But he had a legitimately good game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. What he was doing against the run, the processing, the quick trigger, the physicality, taking on blockers and, stacking and shedding, extending, keeping himself free, playing with leverage, closing down on Justin Fields multiple times in space. He had a really good game. He also had a couple of really nice good coverage reps as well, but we're going to talk about that as this show goes along. He is one of the risers, as I think a lot of people would have expected in this episode, which is part of the reason that he's on the graphic for this episode. What's up, Matthew? Matthew saying good evening. Bob saying let's go. Just the Tippy Canoe, who this is one of my favorite usernames of anybody that comments. I think I've told you that before, but it makes me laugh every time I read it. And you're in here all the time, but so that's even more of a testament to how funny I find this name. The comment is the safety room is just yucky right now, but I think time will heal literally and figuratively. Yeah, it is yucky. That's a good way to put it. I described it as kind of meh. I really just want to see how the dust settles in terms of the injuries. Mike Edwards should be getting some work as we go forward. How does Hamlin's hamstring work out? What does Cole Bishop look like? All of these pieces going forward. But again, that's a piece we're going to talk about as we go going forward. John Roberts saying at least Cole Bishop was on the field wearing a non-contact jersey. Oh, cool comment here from Steven. Steven said, I went to school with Buffalo Joe's dad, Paul. Tough dude. Kind of makes sense there. Toughness breeds more toughness, and that's what Joe Andreessen seems kind of like. Frank saying this prognostication is difficult, not only because of the injuries, but also because of all the bubble players from other teams that hit the market. That's very well said, Frank. I think every move that gets made within any team is also kind of juxtaposed with potential moves you may see happening from other teams and other rosters. I think even just a small example of that is the quarterback situation. I tweeted it out today after Trubisky showed up with a wrap on his knee. His is an injury we're going to talk about in this episode as well. But just kind of the Bills, I don't think the backup QB of this 2024 season is currently on the roster. I would like this team to kind of keep an eye on the roster cut market and go after any potential quarterback that has legitimate backup capability. Again, as Greg and I talked about on the post game Saturday, if Josh Allen goes down, you're almost kind of pretty much dead in the water if you're the Bills, but you want to stem the tide as much as possible. And Trubisky didn't look great even before he went down, but at least he did have experience on his side and you kind of knew what you were getting. Just everything else coming after, them looking at Anthony Brown this week, what we saw from DiNucci on Saturday and how much they were running the ball. It's a really ugly situation when it comes to the Bills quarterback spot right now. So that's just one example of kind of looking to the roster cuts from other teams and potentially kind of filling a need for your squad and also matching it up with your needs and theirs and so on and so forth. John saying the state of preseason depression among Bills fans right now is the worst I've ever seen, drought included. Yeah, it's an interesting mix. I think the kind of preseason depression we've seen amongst Bills Mafia the past several weeks is kind of the universe balancing itself out with all the high highs that Bills Mafia had during training camp from day one, and just the hype of, man, Keon Coleman's making highlight reel catches and everything the offense was doing, and Josh Allen looking good and the offense being on the same page, and Ray Davis looking good minus a couple fumbles and so on and so forth. I think Bills fans hit a lot of highs at that time, and so I think the low lows now are just the universe kind of balancing out to bring everything back to an even keel. Also, for those folks playing at home, for all of you joining me live here on this episode, as you've already seen, as we start to get into some of the comments here from the live chat, if you are watching live at home, feel free to comment into the chat your risers, your fallers, who has disappointed you, who's exceeded your expectations, roster projections and prognostications that you may have for this team, or your thoughts on my risers and fallers. Any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, anything and everything you got, feel free to put it into the chat at any time or place. I guess place doesn't really apply because you have to put it into the chat, but at any time throughout this episode, I will bring up as many as humanly possible. And of course, super chats always get priority because 1, I respect the monetary donation. 2, the color attracts my eyes and pulls me away from my notes. Let's continue. Oh, comment here saying Andy Isabella over KJ Hamler. That's a tough one for me. I understand where you're coming from though, but it's a tough one. Depressed Bills fan says, time for the D-line to step up instead of leaning on the secondary. I think that's a fair point. And, if how Greg Rousseau played Saturday against the Steelers is any potential indication, maybe the defensive line is ready to step it up. Justin Tippecanoe says about his name, I got a trademark just in case anybody in Indiana ever tries to use it. It's lame, but most of my uploads are literally just videos of the river at my house. I love it. That makes me like it even more. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Question here from the chat. Who's the kick returner, punt returner? Is it wrapped up by Hardy? I thought or still think Hamler might have a say in that competition. I thought Hardy looked good against Pittsburgh, but I know, what was it, his second or third return of the night where he backtracked kind of like all the way to the 1-yard line, got himself out of it by going up to the sideline and turning the corner, but that's not going to make Sean McDermott happy or, Coach Smiley, even though, again, he got himself out of it. And had a nice follow-up return right after, or 2 returns after. I think what's nice with Hardy is I think he's got inside-outside versatility. Him showing well on the outside at the cornerback spot, which was a huge surprise to me, just given where he worked at Penn State and his play style, skill set, and his overall size and frame. Seeing him play on the outside, he's comfortable playing on the inside. But again, I think that size and frame might hurt him a little bit more inside from a fit the run standpoint. But I think you get inside outside versatility and the return capability as well. I think that kind of makes you lean towards Hardy. I think Hardy, kind of, where's this comment? A bunch of comments came through. Hold on, let me stop here. Where is it? Matthew saying, is Hardy a lock to make the team? I do think he is a lock to make the team with how well he's played, mainly because he gives you corner depth on the outside and on the inside. And then he also can be your starting returner. I think he's looked good at the return spot. So that in and of itself has value. But the fact that he also can, I don't want to call him like 100% lock, but I think he's played well from an actual corner standpoint. And then he's got the returner upside as well. And then there's baked in value at having a guy who can play outside and inside at the cornerback spot and also be your punt returner and kick returner. That's 4 positions locked up into one dude, which is really nice. And when you're a team that's kind of trying to balance all these 1 to 3 or 4 week injuries that you have, having a dude that can do all that gives you a lot of flexibility in general, but especially with those injuries and then going into the early part of the season. But I think that's fair. Scott's saying lots of handoffs this Saturday. Frank Gore Jr., think he'll make the practice squad? I really hope he does. I really liked what Frank Gore Jr. has brought to this team. And I'm not just saying that because of who his dad is or from like a nostalgia or legacy perspective. He's looked good. Good vision, good feet, runs behind his pads, good power, keeps his feet moving through contact and his legs pushing. Good cuts. Just decisive foot in the ground, shaking guys, like not the most wiggle to his game, but the precision in his cuts will send dudes flying, gets north and south. He gets what's there and then gets a little more because of his ability to play through contact. I would really like it if he made the practice squad. I would be very happy with that. I think he's played well this preseason, and he had a really good game against the Steelers, as did pretty much the entire running back group, even though Cook didn't have a ton of volume. Cook looked good. Davis looked good. Gore looked good. Darrington Evans had some really nice runs. Even the one run for Ty Johnson that went for like 6 yards. They got some good depth at the running back spot. Roy saying, in my opinion, this is not a Super Bowl caliber team, so I'm not overly concerned with the injuries and their effect on the team's success this season, although they do suck! ! Fair. I guess kind of your feeling about the injuries would be tied into, how you feel about the season or, your thoughts on the projection for this team in general. Oh, got to stop here because we got super chat. Appreciate you being here, Carl. Thank you very much for the super chat. Carl says, Ant, we know 1 through 49. Who do you think will be 50 through 53? Oh, we're going to talk about that in the episode. I think it's tied into several positions. I think it's tied into a couple of injuries that we're going to go through to start this episode after I finish getting through some more comments here. Kyle Trimble at Banged Up Bills on Twitter and bangedupbills.com does a tremendous job of injury analysis, timelines, and just getting into the nitty gritty in terms of the details of what injuries are for players, regardless of what the injury is. And so as we get into that, I think that's going to kind of put some things into perspective, because I think the 50 through 53 is really determined by the timeline of certain players at certain positions, mainly Quentin Morris, MVS, tying in the tight end, wide receiver room, the linebacker position. I think all of that kind of will lean this team towards who they keep and why, and the gamesmanship they have to play in terms of who's on the 53, who's on the practice squad, who do they put on IR. We're going to go through all those rules and sets. That's a really good question. I think a lot of it's going to be tied into the injury, not even diagnosis, but by kind of what happens seeing these injuries through going forward, which again muddies this conversation and makes it super annoying. But really good question, Carl. I like that. Bum, 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 bum. Oh, and see, this is fair back and forth. My name is Jeff saying the training staff is disappointing me. And then John Sanders comes through and says the training staff has nothing to do with bad luck. Yeah, Mitch Morris, like the way Morris went down, that was kind of just contact. You can't really prevent that. Similar with Trubisky, similar with Milano. Like, I think there's something to be said for soft tissue injuries occurring, but this team, for the most part, under Sean McDermott, has been relatively healthy over the years. They've had a couple fluke injuries or freak things, like what happened to Milano, what happened to Micah Hyde. But really, they've been a team that, look at the offensive line last year, keeping that starting 5 healthy for the entirety of the year. It's wild, just kind of what they're being hit with now. But hopefully, everything they're seeing, they're getting hit with a lot of volume, but not a lot of significance. Fingers crossed, no jinx here. So we'll see what kind of that looks like going forward. Sophia, appreciate you being here. She says, good Cover One insider news that Samuel's turf toe is very mild. He will likely be back week 1 or week 2. Yeah, I'm going to tie that into some injury analysis later, but yeah, we'll kind of see how that works out. Some more love here for Daequan Hardy saying that he's been a huge revelation. Oh, this is a really good comment. We're going to talk about this in the show. I feel bad for the back end wide receivers. This QB situation doesn't give any of them a chance to showcase in a game setting, but I'm sure the reps with Josh in practice is what they will go off of more anyway. I know I kind of botched that in the end, but I know that's just the way you said. Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's especially when a lot of the conversation has been like, oh, I wonder what the wide receiver grouping looks like this year. Oh, the competition for wide receiver 5 and wide receiver 6 and yada, yada. So much of that is dependent upon the QB play, and the Bills have not gotten good QB2 and or QB3 play. And that's not even, I don't even want to put DiNucci into that category, because him coming in basically midweek and having to run an offense for the majority of the game because Trubisky went down, you're just going to run the ball. You don't want to put him into a situation where he's almost set up for failure and could hurt himself or hurt someone else. So that's no discredit to him. It's just been, Buechele was ugly in his play, and Trubisky wasn't looking great. So yeah, I feel you on that. It's pretty frustrating. Oh, Jason said, would you take Gore or Evans if you had to pick one? Marino had high props for Evans. Darrington Evans has legitimate juice and like real speed. And he's more of a known quantity. I would take Gore. But if the top 3 running backs are Cook, Davis, and Johnson, I like how Evans's skill set complements them, but I would take Gore just from a use standpoint, a play style and skill set standpoint. I think he fits well with what the Bills do from a run game standpoint, especially now, like if they go heavier personnel or condensed formations with the bigger bodied wide receivers that they have, and they want to get downhill and they want to run at teams and try and create vertical displacement, and then pairing that with their zone run scheme, I think he's a good fit for that. But Darrington Evans has done well. Like I legitimately think it might not be high end. Like I don't think Darrington Evans is ever going to be like a 1 or even a high end 2, but he should be on an NFL roster. Like he just produces. He's got good feet. He's fast. You can always find use for dudes like that. He also has some returnability as well if you ever need that. Just the Tippy Canoe saying, I think the dynamic of the bottom few spots of the 53 will affect which positions we keep an extra spot over another. Hardy is a perfect example. By keeping him, maybe it affects how many wide receivers we keep. Exactly. Because you have that positional versatility and value with 4 spots wrapped into 1 for Hardy, it basically allows you to keep another 1 or 2 guys potentially. I like this one from Tim, just saying go Bills. And he's got a Lions logo, which is very interesting. I'm all down for that. I like Franzo tying in the Babylon Spectre reference. He said, I'm all for Buffalo Joe over Babylon. I take the unknown over the broken. Oof, harsh for Babylon Spectre. We will get into that. David saying, I just hope Allen doesn't have to do it all during a playoff stretch November run. I don't want his career short by Beast moving in November and December. Oof, fair. Luke saying, any early intriguing players as mid-season additions? Got to see how the roster cuts shake out over the next couple weeks, but there are some that I'm keeping my eye on. I think this is a question. I know this is probably unlikely, but based on some rumblings, how would you feel about a potential Jahan Dotson trade? I'd love it. I would love it. I loved his tape at Penn State. He was, I got to remember. I think he was my wide receiver 5 that year. I think I had a mid and a high round 2 grade on him. I think he crept up into my wide receiver 5 when he came out a couple of years ago, because that was the Drake London class. Garrett Wilson was my 1. London was my 2. Olave was my 3. I forget who my 4 was. It wasn't Traylon Burks. It was Dotson. I like Jahan Dotson. I think he's a really good route runner. He plays big at the catch point. I think the only issue is kind of his fit in the offense, given his frame and style and skill set, how that pairs with what they have. But I have no problem trying to add a dude who's a really good route runner with really good hands who plays big at the catch point. I'm a fan of Jahan Dotson. And Jason saying, yeah, Darrington Evans, yeah, his returnability is what makes it harder to choose. I think it definitely factors in. It's part of what gives him value. I think he's a good dude. This is a great comment. Arm sleeve Josh equals MVP Josh. I'm digging the arm sleeve. He's got to go with a different color though. If they're rocking the all whites, I don't like the all white arm sleeve. If they're rocking all whites, it's got to be a blue arm sleeve, or ideally, give me that pop of red. Give me a red arm sleeve. Either way, give me the red arm sleeve with the all whites. Give me the red arm sleeve with the all blues, or a blue-white combo, or a white-blue combo. Give me a red arm sleeve. I like the arm sleeve in theory. Yeah, I need the pop of red. I need that color. Don't just go all white. Although the all white is crisp and clean, I need that pop of color. It adds a little something more. Oh, we got a super chat from Scott. Thank you for being here, Scott. And thank you for the super chat. Scott says, any chance we go 5 wide receivers and 4 tight ends? I have some thoughts on that, and we're going to get into it kind of as we go forward, because a couple of the risers I have are at the tight end position, and I think that factors into the wide receiver spot. So we are going to get into that as we go forward. But I think that's a very fair question, especially given one of the tight ends being Zach Davidson and what his skill set is. But we're gonna talk about that as we go forward. Whew, yes, red sleeve, red in all caps, is a game changer. It absolutely is a game changer. All right, let's start to dive into the meat of this episode, the crux of this episode. One of the players actually, and this ties into our sponsorship here with our partners at BetUS. Somebody who had a very good game on Saturday was Mr. Greg Rousseau. And I didn't include film for him in this episode or really much about him because he's not necessarily a riser. He's a starter who had a really good game against the Steelers. But I wanted to bring in this first graphic from our friends at BetUS. And Greg Rousseau and his regular season sack line over under. BetUS has him over at 5.5. As we've talked about a bunch here on the network, our partnership with BetUS, fastest payouts in the industry. Currently, BetUS is offering a 125% deposit match on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. They offer fast and easy deposit and withdrawal processes. You can check out the BetUS link in the episode description below, whether here on YouTube or one of the podcasting apps or platforms. They also offer 24/7 personalized service, 365 days a year, live wagering on all major games. You get 10% back on your net losses twice a year, and they also can give you your very own personal account manager. That is, again, part of the sponsorship here with our folks and friends at BetUS. And again, I just wanted to talk about this a little bit, as Claude already bangs on it there and says over easy. Kind of like eggs. I'm thinking some over easy. Yeah, Greg Rousseau, his regular season sack line is set at over under 5.5. He had 2.5 credited on Saturday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think this is a really easy smash for the over. And I wanted to tie it into the conversation with the edge position. I do think there's a chance that Von Miller, who has looked like he's had some juice in training camp, I think he could flirt potentially on the high end with a double-digit sack season. I think Von could be in the 8 to 11 range, somewhere around there, maybe 7 to 10, 8 to 11. I would like Epinesa to be in that conversation as well. But I think just from a known quantity standpoint, I think Greg Rousseau is the best Buffalo Bills player to approach double-digit sacks. And so for me, I think this over 5.5 is pretty easy. I think he's going to be a volume guy in stretches. I don't think he's going to be a dude who gets a sack a game, which would be a wild rate. But I think you might see him get 3 sacks one game, and then he doesn't have anything for the next 3, and then he logs 2, and then he logs another 2, and then nothing for the next 2 or 4 games, and then logs another 3. Like, he's going to get those matchups that he can exploit because of his length and strength and frame. And we saw it on Saturday against the Steelers, right? His ability to kind of get into the chest, the wrist control that he exhibited, the technique that he's paired with the length and frame that he offers is a really, 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 really nice combination. And he's somebody who's extremely smart. He has very good high football IQ. Just watching him be able to display that when he jumped in the film room with myself and Eric, he knows how to pass rush. It's just a matter of, can he stay healthy, not get those wheels banged up, ankle stuff, feet stuff. So hopefully, he can stay healthy, but it's a very encouraging performance from him on Saturday against the Steelers starters, really working Broderick Jones handily, getting him off his feet completely on the 1 sack, and then a really good wrist control to pop him and pry him open for the other. Very encouraged to kind of see how he's played. And so he's technically a riser, kind of, but not really in this episode because he's already a starter. But I wanted to tie this in again with our sponsorship with BetUS. Again, just over under 5.5 sacks. Smash that over for Mr. Greg Rousseau at minus 120. Thank you very much to our friends again at BetUS. All right. Let us start to move into some of this conversation. The first thing I want to do, again, just all the injuries. We've talked about it, how it muddies this whole conversation that we're about to have. I'm going to go through pretty much everything right now at this point, just to kind of put things into perspective. I'm going to reference this consistent point. So if you are joining later, I guess you're not going to see what I'm about to say, but I'm not going to keep going back and referencing all the injuries, but wanted to kind of put this into perspective because I think this sets the table for us going forward. Again, a lot of this conversation, not even a lot of it, all of this injury conversation that we're having is courtesy of Mr. Banged Up Bills, Kyle Trimble. Find him on Twitter at Banged Up Bills. Actually, let me confirm that Twitter handle for him and make sure there's not any underscores or anything. Nope, it's straight up at Banged Up Bills. And then you have the website as well, which is just bangedupbills.com. So we're going to go through a bunch of the injuries. This is all courtesy of his Buffalo Bills preseason emergency injury update from yesterday because of the avalanche of Bills injuries. We're going to start with Quentin Morris. He's week to week with a shoulder injury. Again, and I want to say this. So these injuries I'm going to be speaking on and reading off the diagnosis, timelines, timetables, all that kind of stuff. It sets the table for some of these risers and some of these fallers that we're having in this conversation. And then it ties into that roster projection piece again, because of who do you keep and why do you keep them based on timelines, based on, again, the whole muddiness of everything. There isn't that easy cut and dry of, and not that I want this, but it isn't that easy cut and dry. Well, if so-and-so's out for the year, so he's got to be replaced. It's more of, okay, so-and-so's out for a couple weeks. Do we put him on the IR? Do we not? Who do we replace him with? What's the role? What's the skill set? Not to mention these injuries happening to guys that are kind of depth guys and in the conversation and not necessarily known starters or guys that are going to be jettisoned from the team and cut anyways. It's a very complicated aspect, but Kyle did a tremendous job here. So Quentin Morris, week to week with a shoulder injury after being ruled out during halftime of Saturday's game. The initial thought was that he suffered an AC joint sprain that he continued to play through, but with the severity increased, Kyle went back and re-watched the tape. So a closer look for Kyle, he found a more likely instance for a more severe injury, such as a labrum tear when he fell in the end zone right before halftime. If he did tear the labrum, he could possibly return with a harness and play through the injury, but there would still be significant concerns with his ability to block and catch the ball in traffic. This will require more information in the coming days as the team is also undergoing further evaluations on Morris with a decision expected soon. And then he just talks a lot of scientific stuff, much higher risk of further damage to the labrum with subluxations and dislocations, all these types of things. I think what's interesting with Quentin Morris is I feel, good comment here from Bills Are Electric saying, I feel bad for Quentin Morris having a great summer. Quentin Morris is a really good all-around tight end 3. And I don't say really good because he's just this plus matchup. He's functional as a run blocker and he's functional as a pass catcher. He's good with both. The options after him are going to be some of the guys we talked about tonight, either Trey McKitty or Zach Davidson. Both of those guys are more siloed in their skill sets. Whereas Morris, again, he can function and insert on duo. He can get vertical. I mean, he should have had a touchdown in week 1. From Mitch Trubisky. He had that touchdown last year from Josh Allen against the Giants. His background as a receiver, what he's been able to do and transition in his game as a run blocker. He's just such a perfect tight end 3 because he can function as a pass catcher and as a run blocker. If he's out, that's kind of really unfortunate because what you're left with in replacing him in either guy that we're going to talk about tonight is more of a siloed aspect, in a more siloed skill set, I should say, than a kind of overall skill set like you have with Quentin Morris. Who else I want to talk about here? Marquez Valdes-Scantling, neck injury, which was pretty scary on Saturday. I'm always terrified anytime I see anybody go down with their neck. And as Kyle notes, he did not require the backboard to leave the field, but he did require assistance to walk off the field. There was, what he talks about here? The hit came to the right side of his helmet, which snapped the head left, suggesting at least a stinger, if not more of a whiplash injury. On Sunday, Tom Pelissero announced that MVS suffered a neck sprain with negative x-rays. He's been deemed week to week which is not an ideal situation for a veteran fighting for a roster spot. You're looking at hyperextension injuries of the neck. Fractures have already been ruled out, but considering this is a neck sprain, that implies that ligaments are involved. When a hyperextension injury occurs, I'm going to try and pronounce this right, the anterior longitudinal ligament or all can be damaged. And Kyle has a lot of great graphics up on the site there. And then he mentions other structures potentially damaged include the annulus fibrosis or the outside portion of an intervertebral disc or facet capsular ligaments could be in play. Fancy way to say all that to say it's difficult to identify a timeline given what we have now. Week 1 and beyond may be in question until more information is provided. A short-term IR stint would not be out of the question in this case. And then Kyle also says for an athlete to return safely to the field of play, they should be pain-free, full range of motion, full strength, and no evidence of a neurological injury. However, if after a time period of rest and rehab, MVS shows ligament instability from his sprain or symptomatic disc herniation, then he could be seeing a situation not unlike Micah Hyde's from 2022. While this is obviously concerning, this is considered the worst case scenario given the current timeline we have and how the injury occurred. As Jason says, Kyle Trimble's a freaking gem. Yeah, he's absolutely phenomenal. I DM'd him before I did the show. I was like, hey man, like I'm going to be fully just reading things from your site and from your posts. So appreciate you. Is there anything you want me to talk about or plug? And he was like, no, just mention the site. And then he's on with Joe Marino on Locked On Bills weekly during the season. Yeah, he is a gem and offers a lot of insight. This ties into the first of kind of the risers, fallers conversation. MVS, I think it's hard to, I feel bad labeling him as a faller, granted, because the injury is playing a role, but even without the neck injury, just the inconsistency. We saw it through camp, some of the drops, but then he came back and he made some nice catches, had a couple touchdowns that weren't getting publicized or talked about as much because they didn't fit the narrative. But you're just seeing that kind of inconsistency. And then I think you look at his play on the field. He has that drop in preseason week 1 against Chicago, some inconsistencies in blocking, stuff that he has been doing since he was in Green Bay in terms of, functioning in the run game. He was better as a run blocker against Pittsburgh. I really thought he was a lock to make this roster at wide receiver 5. And my whole thought was, I really kind of thought the top 5 were locked, especially the top 4. In no order, I thought it was Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Matt Collins, and then MVS was your 5. And the real conversation started at wide receiver 6. Would it be, for my money, I thought it was going to be KJ Hamler, but would it be Hamler? Would it be Isabella? Would it be Shavers? Would it be Claypool? Would it be Justin Shorter for the truthers out there? And we've kind of seen the depth guys fall off by the wayside a little bit. Then we have all the muddiness from the poor QB play we've seen in the preseason, which again, like I said, muddies this conversation and just makes evaluation really murky and really tough to discern. MVS, I think, is a really interesting one. I definitely think his stock is down. And with the opportunity to, again, like Kyle said there, not ruling out an IR stint, not kind of putting that out of the question. So do you put him on the IR? Do you outright cut him? Like, is he going to be able to return by week 1? And even if he was completely healthy and no neck injury, I still think it's not a lock that he was going to make the roster just because of how great that he hasn't played. But also within that conversation, no one else has really played better than him. Like, if you want to tell me, okay, Tyrell Shavers, I'd take Tyrell Shavers over him. I'd be like, okay, but also not necessarily. Like, you can make a case for a lot of guys. You could also make the case for MVS. Again, it's all muddy and murky. The injury just makes it that much more so. But yeah, there are some options there based off of that. It's a frustrating situation, and it ties into one of, so he's a faller for me, but it also ties into one of the risers that we're going to talk about later. Another injury at the wide receiver position, Curtis Samuel with his turf toe, a surprising injury to kind of come out of Monday's injury news. We are going to go. This is a really good description from Kyle saying turf toe injury occurs when the great toe is sprained. This is the result of the toe getting hyperextended due to the foot bending too far forward. This happens when pushing off during sprinting or if the foot is on the ground with the toe extended and another player falls on the foot. It typically becomes chronic unless proper rest and rehab is performed, roughly 4 to 6 weeks. But during the middle of a football season, it's hard to take enough time off to get fully healthy. Considering the team has 3 weeks until the first game, Samuel may avoid missing time, but it'll be close. Having sat out last week will have given him nearly a month to mostly recover. However, when he does return, he may still deal with some lingering issues and play with a stiff sole shoe and taping the toe for support to avoid aggravating the area. Watch his participation levels closely. And again, the issue why it lingers so much is when you sprint, you push off the balls of your feet, and that promotes toe extension. Add an already loose area in there, you have less leverage than you once did, and it continues to aggravate the area. So some nice reference there from Kyle. He also notes that Samuel had a toe injury last year. It's unclear if it was turf toe, and then he breaks down some of the splits before and after. Again, another wide receiver injury, further kind of muddying the plot a little bit for the Bills. But for the audio listeners, I took a drink there. But yeah, I'm not too worried about Curtis Samuel. My issue is with the lingering piece. I think it'll be good for week 1. The question is, what percentage? If he's operating at 80%, 90%, 100%, and then as Kyle noted, you're not really getting a chance to properly heal and recover if you are playing on it. So if you're playing on it at 80 in week 1, that means at best you're probably rocking at 80 for the entirety of the year because it's only going to get better, like he said, with rest and rehab, roughly 4 to 6 weeks. So he's kind of going to fall into that timeline a little bit in terms of, them sitting in this week against the Steelers and then how much time kind of leads up to that first game of the season against the Cardinals. But not ideal, again, for another position grouping that has some questions already. Another injury, Balin Spector, right calf. That muddies the linebacker position even more. He's now week to week, which suggests he may have had a setback with his rehab, putting week 1 in doubt. Then we have Damar Hamlin, suffered a left hamstring last week. Noted it was something minor, but he is now also week to week. Then you have Mike Edwards, a right hamstring. He's set to return to individual drills this week after missing the last 3 weeks due to a hamstring strain. Cole Bishop slated to return to individual drills after suffering a left shoulder injury on July 30th. The belief is that he had a non-displaced scapular fracture. He'll be 3 weeks removed from the initial injury, which indicates that he is healing at a rate the training staff is happy with. He will need to get the conditioning back and make sure the bone is healed before initiating contact. Linebacker Nicholas Morrow, set to return to practice following his injury on August 2nd. Missing just over 2 weeks of the injury as he slowly works back. While his return isn't all that surprising, the use of core muscle the entire time suggests that he does have a tear in the area, which could require surgery. It is possible to play through this injury, though he will be lacking a lot of lateral mobility and explosion. At this point in the game, that may be better than what the Bills have available. Casey Toohill out since August 8th with a groin designation, scheduled to come back after 2 weeks off. And then several others, a lot of calf stuff. Austin Johnson with a calf injury. Javon Solomon with a calf injury. Trainers did not need to go out and assess Solomon, but he was later ruled out once he returned to the sidelines. Considering he will be limited in practice this week, it's one of the best possible outcomes for him. So there's more details and pieces in Kyle's article on Banged Up Bills, or at Banged Up Bills on Twitter, or bangedupbills.com. But I wanted to go through the ones that were relative to the risers and fallers conversation that we are having tonight. Bills are electric. Okay, I'm already saying duct tape. Oh, so our back seven is already in duct tape mode. It could be duct tape, could be falling apart. Could be tape made from a duck. Bills are electric, saying week to week means 3 weeks. I usually take week to week as like 2 to 4, but yeah, 3 is kind of the safe ballpark. I take week to week, meaning like a couple to several. So for me, it's usually 2 to 3, sometimes pushing to 4. I like this positivity from Charles saying, getting all our injuries out of the way early, so we're good for the Super Bowl. Sophia saying Solomon was a full practice today. And Sophia also pointed out that Bishop was a redshirt at practice today, as pointed out. Sal coming in and asking your opinion on Buffalo Joe. Does he make the roster or practice squad? I'm going to be going over him in a little bit. I will say he's trending up, and we'll get into the specifics of that in a little bit. Wow, I love this comment from Frank saying, if he learns how to block a lot better, Davidson is a 4.640 version of Pete Metzelaars. Of course, that's a reach. I like the connection there. I like that. Ooh, Roy is down on DeMar Hamlin, or KJ Hamler, I should say. I'm sorry, saying I don't get the fascination with Hamler. He's done nothing in the NFL. He's had injuries, and again, at the end of the day, it's a dude with special teams ability, but who's fast. Like, he is extremely fast. He's shifty. He's got decisive, sharp cuts once he has the ball in his hands. Dudes that are fast always get a look. Even if they haven't produced, even if their timeline and career trajectory hasn't worked out, dudes that are fast and dudes that can run, they kind of always get an opportunity in the NFL. All right. So within that, we read through a bunch of the injuries. Now, I want to talk about, too, just real quickly, I'm going to read through some roster pieces in terms of practice squad rules and 53-man IR designations, all of that kind of stuff. Start with some IR things. Once a player is placed on the IR list, they must miss at least 4 of the team's games. While on the IR, they are not counted on the team's active roster, but their compensation is still counted towards the salary cap. After 4 games, a player may be designated to return. And then I think this is where a lot of people get familiar. That opens a 21-day window during which they can attend practices, but are still not counted on the active roster. If they are not activated on the roster or to the roster during the 21-day window, they must remain on IR for the rest of the season. Each player may be designated for a return twice a season, and you have an unlimited amount of IR spots, but a team is allowed just 8 returns from IR during the regular season. If you appear in the postseason, you'll be allowed 10 returns that year. At the final roster cutdown, a team may designate up to 2 players already on their reserved or injured list to be available for return during the season. Even if they do not eventually return to the roster, players designated in this way will automatically count against the limit of 8 or 10 IR returns. And then some quick practice squad rules. 16 players, 17 if one of them is an international player. And then there's specific qualifications for practice squad players who, again, can be signed by any other team and leave immediately at any time if it's for an active roster spot with that other team. You can't go practice squad to practice squad. And the qualifications are players who do not have a season of NFL experience, so basically rookies, second-year players who were on the active list for fewer than 9 regular season games during their only season, up to 4 players per team who have played no more than 2 seasons, no game limitations, and then up to 6 players per team with no limitations as to their number of seasons played. Now that we got all that kind of red tape out of the way, again, I wanted to put that in there. So we went over some injury concerns with kind of how that shaped the roster in this roster projection and conversation. We went over 53-man roster rules. We went over some IR designations. We went over some practice squad pieces. So wanted to get those out of the way. And now let us get into the film portion of the show. And again, the part that ties in the risers and fallers and all of that. I'm going to take a quick drink again, and then we will get into the film. Also, just for those watching live, I'm getting like connection note. It's pouring here, but I'm getting connection like bar notices here on my screen. So if anybody wants to tell me in the chat if the stream is clear, if I'm sounding good, if everything looks good, or if I'm choppy or wonky, I apologize if I am. I hope once the weather clears, things will get better. But if I'm coming out bad, if anybody wants to let me know in the chat, that would be most appreciated. All right, so let's get into, again, rush projection, risers, fallers, conversation. I wanted to tie it in with the film aspect because I thought that made a lot of sense to kind of show you folks where the conversation starts with a lot of these guys. Thank you, Sophia. I appreciate you. She's saying that I'm clear. That's very helpful. All right. Let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. I always forget that I have to click add to stage. And there we go. Okay, cool. So the first play we're going to look at is related to Mr. Javon Solomon over here off the right edge and Mr. Joe Andreessen, Buffalo Joe, at the linebacker spot. Thank you, Carl. Carl saying I sound fine. Appreciate you, Carl. So just to kind of get into it a little bit, like we talked about, Mr. Joe Andreessen, what does his path to the field look like? The whole conversation around it. I think what's interesting with Andreessen is at the very least, he earned himself kind of an opportunity to get more sample size, more snaps. And again, like I said, and we're going to see on this play here, he had legit plays on Saturday against the Steelers. He was shooting gaps. He was playing with physicality and juice, getting in on linemen, knocking them backwards, the ability to extend and shed, keep himself free. A couple really good plays out in space against running backs and against Justin Fields. I think he helped himself tremendously. And even when he made mistakes, they were aggressive mistakes. He was still kind of shooting, cutting off the front side. If he missed a tackle, he had a couple missed tackles or broken tackles, which, you want to see him clean that up. But an athletic, physical, quick performance from him. I thought he processed well. He was quick on the snap. His eyes and his brain kind of led him to the right spots. He also had a couple good reps in coverage, including one on a Tampa 2 coverage, I believe, where he carried Pat Freiermuth. They had trips to the top side. Freiermuth was the 3. He carried him vertical, which was really nice to see. And I think he also took advantage of mistakes made by the Steelers' offensive line. I want to see him get more sample size to decide how legit he is or not. The Bills traditionally, over the years, I went through and looked at a whole bunch of the roster stuff. Traditionally, they keep 6 linebackers usually, but again, so much of that was Tyler Medikevich and special teams value. I think Andreessen offers special teams value, and it's not just because he rocks the 44 like Tyler Medikevich. I think with his speed and athleticism and juice, makes a lot of sense as a kick coverage type of guy or a punt coverage type of guy. So we'll kind of see what happens with that. And actually, while we're at it, let me take a look at Bills special teams snaps for. So Andreessen did not. He had 3 special team snaps against the Steelers, and he had none. Week 1, that can't be right. No, I lied. And he had 13 special team snaps week 1 against the Chicago Bears. So I'm not going to say he's a complete lock. I am fairly confident he makes the 53, and all of it too, again, tying in with, like we talked about those injuries, right? Nicholas Morrow is still, I know everybody wants Dorian Williams to be a thing, and there's people that want Andreessen to be a thing as well. If I have to put in a third linebacker right now, or I have to put in somebody from Matt Milano, I would still probably put in Nicholas Morrow. Even though I know he's not the sexiest, I think he just gives you a high enough floor and a known quantity, given his experience and veteran status and the games that he's seen, the defenses that he's played in, and what his skill set is. But, I don't know how that core muscle and groin injury is going to turn out for him, as we read from Kyle a little while ago. So Morrow kind of gums up the works and muddies that conversation even further. Deion Jones has been all right, but also meh. Balin Spector, I don't think he's ever really been anything to write home about. He gives you some depth and some special teams work, but we haven't really seen much for him. He's also banged up. Ulofoshio, 5th round pick, special teams value. I think he probably makes the roster from the cost-effective standpoint, the athleticism, the special teams value. So much of the conversation is muddy. I mean, and just from a lock perspective, Bernard's a lock and Dorian Williams is a lock. And then I think looking at the rest of it, I think it's Ulofoshio, and not in this order, but Ulofoshio, Andreessen, Morrow, and then you're looking at Spector or Deion Jones. I'd probably think they lean Spector if he's healthy, but we'll kind of see what happens in that regard. Charles saying they had Joe, meaning, Joe Andreessen. I don't know why I thought his first name was something other than Joe. They had Andreessen playing the mic, so he'd be the backup to Bernard at best, ? Good call. So he was playing the mic. Dorian was the will. Based on what they did with Bernard and some of the conversation on, because they want guys to know both, but then they don't want to overload guys at the same time. I think that's a fair point to note that he had a lot of success in this game as the mic. And even though Babbage a couple weeks ago talked about like they don't have a mic and a will, and it's just like linebacker and not talking about strong side versus weak and all of that conversation piece. There are guys who, with Bernard and Milano in terms of who leans more towards what kind of position, but that they also each have skill sets that allow them to play both. Also, Milano has a ton of experience in this defense and with the team. Bernard, less so, but tremendously smart dude, has that advantage of playing in Dave Aranda's system at Baylor, which prepared him well for the NFL, but especially for life with the Buffalo Bills and a Sean McDermott defense. I think if you're looking at Andreessen, I think it might be a lot to kind of say he's going to start this year. If we're looking at day one right now, I feel like the day one starters are Dorian Williams and Tyrell Bernard. And then it's a matter of how healthy is Moreau. What do you got from Andreessen? It's a conversation, I think, from linebacker 3 through linebacker 5 or 6. But I think if we're kind of looking at that spot right now, I think it's Dorian Williams and Tyrell Bernard. But regardless of that, Andreessen played great against the Steelers. I'm very excited to see what he does against the Panthers on Saturday, when he'll probably get a lot more burn. Let's dive into this first play. So I've got Andreessen highlighted here in the middle, and then I've also got Javon Solomon highlighted on the right. I'm going to talk about Solomon in a minute. He's another riser for me. Actually, I'll talk about Solomon real quick now. He's another riser with me along with Andreessen. We're going to show a pass rush clip from him this week that tied into an adjustment from last week and who he was in college. I also think the rise of Javon Solomon also kind of coalesces into DeJuan Smoot being meh. I was really high on Smoot, the signing coming into camp, and he's just has been kind of not much in the preseason. One of his best aspects is what he does on 2-man games as a spiker, and his spikes have been clunky, which isn't necessarily all on him, but him and defensive tackles kind of colliding into one another. We've seen him lose edge contain multiple times against the run, including a couple of really ugly ones against Chicago that was just basic crack toss or outside zone, which is unfortunate. So I think part of that riser conversation, I think Solomon is a riser regardless, but my initial thought was I had him as edge 5 making this team. I think with how well he's played as a pass rusher and against the run and the athleticism he brings, that in conjunction with Smoot not playing great, I think Solomon may be playing himself more into the edge 4 conversation. So that's part of the reason why he's a riser for me in this episode as well. Let's go to it. Let's go to the tape. I know I've said that 2 or 3 times, but now let's go to it for legit. Okay, so right on the snap, and we'll start with Andreessen. If you watch, as soon as this snap hits and clicks, boom, he's already firing. His eyes right on Wilson, right onto the running back track, sees what's happening in front of him, the zone run, everybody stepping to their right in unison. But watch him read it, shoot the gap, and then it's the big piece. This lineman right here, this is Zach Frazier, center out of the University of West Virginia. I really liked him as a prospect. I would have gladly taken him as a Buffalo Bill at the end of the first round or in the early second. People mover, physical, not the most athletic dude, but good hands, plays with leverage, and again, is a physical, strong, imposing type of center. Watch Andreessen just run through Frazier's shoulder. And again, Frazier is trying to, let's talk about it. So because it's a zone block, we got the double team here. So Frazier is trying to feed block this defensive tackle to his left guard. He's leaning into him with this shoulder in hopes that he can kind of stand this defensive tackle up or stonewall him, so that way his left guard can cross face, turn, and basically seal that man inside, because they're trying to create alleys and lanes over here on this side, right? So let me erase all my beautiful drawings. So he is stepping and helping a little bit here, which is part of the reason why, as we go forward, he doesn't get his full body on Andreessen. He's only really getting a shoulder and an arm. But watch Andreessen just get low. Watch him drop his inside arm, and bang, just powers and rips right through Frazier, continues on down, and makes the tackle on Cordero Patterson. We're going to play it in real time a couple times so you folks can see it. Bang, bang. That's a really good physical play. He's shooting the gap. He's making the tackle. That's a huge piece too, right? He makes the tackle. Let me go back again. There we go. Just going to keep clicking it and rolling it for you guys. Clicks. Boom. I think the real time lets you see the quickness and the physicality, right? The trigger gets low, plays through the shoulder and arm of the center, and makes the tackle. Now, the other component of this play is Mr. Javon Solomon, who, like I talked about, pass rushing upside, tons of production. Great comment here from Charles saying click and close. Absolutely. Those are some of my favorite phrases, like quick trigger, click and close, shooting gaps, all that kind of stuff. My favorite one is somebody who has that quick trigger, closes, and then lights somebody up, because then it's click, close, detonate. That's one of my favorite things to say in the world. And yeah, as Claude says, Zach Frazier is no slouch. He is not in any way, shape, or form. As Nikki says here, Smoot has looked more bad than good. And again, that's tying into the Javon Solomon conversation, who I saw him with a lot of pass rush upside. I didn't know what he'd be as a guy against the run in terms of what he would be as an every down player as a rookie, because although he does have fine arm length and hand size for his overall size and build, he still is under 6'1", and he's under 250 pounds. He's like 6 foot, and I forget the exact measurement, but he's slightly under 6'1", and he's 246 pounds. So that's what he was listed at coming out of Troy. But This is a really good run defense rep against Darnell Washington for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, if you folks know about Darnell Washington, tight end last year coming out of Georgia, is a mauler in the run game. And part of his appeal right away is just what he offered as a run blocker. Watch Javon Solomon. And again, pairing it with that Smoot conversation. Smoot has not been good setting the edge. He hasn't been good against the run. Watch Javon Solomon come through. Bang. He bangs with Darnell Washington. But watch, this is the key, watch Solomon's outside arm. This is really technical and really pretty, because if you watch it just in normal speed, real time, you see the physicality, right? You see him set that edge. It's part of the reason why, let me go back. Like, I hate when the clips are too close. There we go. Okay. If you're watching it in real time, right, it just looks like, oh, he did a really good job setting the edge. Part of the reason Andreessen is able to make this tackle is because Solomon sets that edge and forces Patterson to go inside of Darnell Washington, which allows Andreessen to make that tackle. If Solomon doesn't set this edge, Patterson can get outside of him, and then that makes it not impossible, but it makes a harder tackle for Andreessen, or it makes it a tackle that doesn't happen. But when you're watching it in real time, you're just seeing him bang into Washington, right? Here comes Javon Solomon off the snap, gets under Washington, stands him up. The hand usage right here. Watch him chop down that outside hand of Darnell Washington so that way he gets the leverage control. Washington only has one hand on him, which is his inside hand, which is okay because Solomon's setting the edge. If you're talking about gap responsibility here, this is his gap. That is what he's responsible for. If we're looking at it from, again, a pre-snap alignment in terms of who's doing what and who's responsible for what, that is what his job is. So he's not letting this run get outside him. And it's just the hand usage in conjunction with the physicality. Come out of your stance, get low, jack him up, and right here comes that chop. Bang. You see, just detach that arm. Really good hand usage. Hand usage that he normally uses as a pass rusher. Here he is using it as a run defender against a really good run blocking tight end who, if I'm correct here, let me pull up Darnell Washington's measurables. Yeah, Darnell Washington is listed at 264 pounds. He's 6'7", 264. I'm sorry, 6'6", 6'6", and 264 pounds. So he has him by 6 inches and almost 20 pounds. That's a really good run set or edge set against the run from Javon Solomon. Again, it's two dudes making a play together. Solomon off the edge, setting the edge and forcing this run to stay inside the tight end, and Andreessen clicking and closing and making a really good tackle. That's two really good plays from two really good rookies right there. And you can see how pumped Solomon is. He doesn't make this tackle, but he knows it. Watch Solomon get up. He's pumped. He's feeling that. And Williams recognized it. Who was that? Austin Johnson recognized it. Like, you can always tell how good a play is from a dude by how many like helmet taps or like daps they get after the play. Andreessen got a ton in this game. Solomon gets one here. Again, that's just great defense. Play it in slow-mo one more time. See Andreessen, read it, click, close, play through the shoulder. Oh, and this is a good freeze frame too. Again, Darnell Washington's trying to get into him here. Here's that outside arm of Solomon. Damn, I kind of muddied it there. Here it is. It's nice. You can see it because he's got long white sleeves and white gloves. Watch him just chop down that arm, clear that outside, and force this run back in and set that edge. Nice rep. Nice rep from Solomon. Nice rep from Mr. Joe Andreessen. Another one here highlighting Joe Andreessen, but I also wanted to highlight DeShawn Williams and Daequan Hardy on this one. Defensive tackle, just to speak on it quick, has been a weird one. Like, I've liked some of the stuff Dwayne Carter has done, but I also haven't been impressed. DeShawn Williams has had some really nice reps, and he's also had some reps where he's gotten like blown off the ball. The depth, the defensive tackle spots after Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones, and now we add in a calf injury to Austin Johnson into the mix, which muddies things. Like, I'm kind of actually weirdly concerned about the interior defensive line depth overall, just with how everybody's been playing. But you had a great stop by DeShawn Williams on third down that set up the nice fourth down stop from Joe Andreessen on Justin Fields later in the game. So that was a really good play from Williams. And this is a good one here too. So I have these three highlighted. So you've got Williams, you've got Hardy, and you got Andreessen. Let's watch Williams up front first at defensive tackle. Quick little club, swim over. Williams is important because this is the route, this outside route, this dig is the oh wow, that's pretty accurate from me. This is what Fields is trying to hit. If there's no pressure from Williams, DeShawn Williams, granted, Fields say this doesn't happen. Say Williams is gone. So if Fields is sitting pretty in this pocket, he does have to layer this ball either perfectly between Dorian Williams and Joe Andreessen, or he's got to throw it and layer it over them and kind of drop it in. So it's not a guaranteed throw. It's not the easiest throw in the world, but Fields is trying to hit that dig. He's hoping for kind of this inside route to clear out the safety a little bit, which it does. And then he can kind of hit this route coming into this spot right here. But he is unable to hit that. And as you can see here, it's not going to be the easiest throw in the world because he has to layer it or fire it in there, but he's got a decent amount of space. But DeShawn Williams, Mr. 93 up front, wins club, get through, forces Williams off the spot. Now, good job from Williams. Let's watch Mr. Daequan Hardy outside corner here at the bottom. Hardy gets sucked in by the play action. He's in. Immediately after he gets sucked in, what does he do? He turns, he robots, he gets his eyes on field. Okay, he looks back and he sees kind of what is developing with the route distribution. Now, what you're supposed to have out here, based on the coverage look, you can kind of see it. So Elam is going with his man, but you've got the single high safety. Hardy is responsible for this deep third. So this is a good job from Daequan Hardy getting sucked in initially, but then getting back to his deep third responsibility to influence this throw. He comes screaming back, takes his deep third against the man on the deep over. Again, he doesn't know what's happening behind him. For all he knows, Fields is setting his feet and is trying to fire this over here or do something. Now, again, if you want to play devil's advocate, Hardy is screaming up there, and technically, like, the dig then keeps going and could potentially become available. But I just think for being a rookie and being a guy who wasn't really slotted to play outside, that's a nice recovery from Daequan Hardy there. Oh, and I see the call. I think I answered it. Charles saying, what coverage is this? So this is a cover 3 coverage. And if you want to go, so pre-snap, you're seeing Kareem Jackson. So Kareem Jackson is going to drop into the post as the deep safety. This is Kendall Williamson, who's a safety. He is going to have flat responsibility. So if you watch, again, forget that they get sucked in versus the run, because that kind of muddies it for you a little bit. I can understand that. But based on what you have, and you look at this is Kendall Williamson here in the flat. And then you have a hook player. There's nobody out here in the flat for Jamarcus Ingram, but if there was, he would be out here in the flat. And then Daequan Hardy, again, has deep third. So if you're kind of looking at it from everybody, Elam has a deep third, Kareem Jackson is the post safety, and then Daequan Hardy has a deep third, and then you got flat, hook, and flat again. So that's kind of what it would be. So you're looking at cover 3. So what's nice, again, it's not ideal that he got kind of like misled, but it happens, right? You're playing the run, you get sucked in. What are you going to do about it once you make a mistake? Hardy gets sucked in, turns, and tries to get back. Gets screaming back to his deep third. And also, if you notice too, turns a little bit, kind of tries to get his head around, seeing what's going to happen. Again, if you really want to nitpick it, you can say he kind of went with that deep over in the clear, which technically allows the dig to come open behind him. But the fact that he recognized it and got back to his responsibility, I thought was a decent enough recover. Now, the last piece of this, Mr. Joe Andreessen, pretty cut and dry and simple. He just tracks down Justin Fields in space. Watch Andreessen gain depth. He sees Fields come out. Now, I know Fields on this play stumbles a little bit, but that's a really solid play from Joe Andreessen. I know everybody, I'm going to let this play run a little bit so we can see it from the other angle and we can just watch. Again, here's Mr. Joe Andreessen. I know Fields gets a lot of flack for what he is as a thrower of the football as a quarterback, but as a runner, like, dude is electric. Like, he has so much juice as a runner. He is a legitimate problem. And I know he stumbles on this play, but this is not easy to track him down in space. And watch Andreessen just close. What's nice, too, is how he comes out of it. Watch him slow play it because he doesn't want to completely bail on his coverage responsibility. Watch him kind of just shuffle. Okay, like, I'm not committing. Okay, I'm committing. And you can see it more in real time. Again, watch Andreessen. I'm coming. All right, here I go. And then he closes it. So it's a responsible play and an athletic play kind of wrapped into one, again, against a very dynamic and electric runner in Mr. Justin Fields. And then also, again, I wanted to show from this angle, we'll watch what DeShawn Williams does, who, again, I wanted to highlight on this play. And he might end up playing a role. If Austin Johnson's calf injury isn't great, depending on how that develops, calf injuries and soft muscle injuries can be weird. And then Carter isn't playing great. It is kind of interesting to see what he could be, but watch this from Carter. He steps initially, but then reads the play, clubs his man past him, then gets the arm over on the inside to get rid of that hand for support, gets held, pushes through the hold, and then just gets chucked out of the way by the tight end. Good job by the tight end. But again, he forces Fields off his spot, which is what forces him to evade in the first place. So nice play by several players there for the Bills defense. Here's another one for Mr. Javon Solomon. Let me go back. Charles says, thanks, and I know it's zone, but if the offense players stay in to block, why the defenders guard empty grass versus the rushing QB? So you still don't, if we go to the sideline angle, so what you're going here and what you're saying here. So this is, so you're saying, like, why do they guard empty grass versus the rushing QB? So it's a spot drop. Like, they're still got to get to their spot. You don't know who's coming in behind you. Say Fields runs right here, right? So say he takes off. If Ingram and Andreessen just immediately buzz down and are like, okay, cool, let's go take out Justin Fields. If they both just sell out for him here, this becomes open. This becomes an easier throw for Fields. If you watch what Ingram, so this is part of the reason why Andreessen slow plays it, but also watch Jamarcus Ingram right here. Like, he's still sitting there. That's kind of what's influencing Justin Fields to not make this throw, because he has to get it over Ingram and then get it. So if there's no Ingram there, let me go back to it. If there's no Ingram there, there's a chance he can just bullet it to try and beat Kaiir Elam. But because Ingram's there, he's got to layer it over Ingram, which gives Kaiir Elam, because of how close Kaiir Elam is in coverage, this gives Kaiir Elam the opportunity to make a play on the ball or undercut it. And if you watch it let's watch it from that fun end zone angle, you can see it too. Here he goes. He's scrambling. Boom. So that's a good representation of it, right? If instead of covering his spot, like, I know he's guarding technically empty grass because there's no one in front of him, but there still is that threat behind him. If Jamarcus Ingram isn't here, there's a chance Field can just fire this ball right. I know I didn't draw a straight line, but he can just fire this ball right to the wide receiver. But because Ingram's there, he's in the passing window. And if Fields wants to throw this ball, he either has to get it way around him, or he's got to go over him and kind of arc it, which gives Elam a chance to make a play on the ball. Plus, that's a hard throw in general to try and layer that ball over somebody. You see how it kind of all plays out? Even this guy too, right? Like, this route ends up coming open. Ingram deters all that. If everybody just sells out against the QB, then those zones are vacated and Fields has a chance to make that throw. Let's go to the next play. All right, cool. So Javon Solomon, this is one I was really excited to see in game, and I noted it on Twitter. I talked about this again on Twitter last week, but also when I did the breakdown of Javon Solomon at Troy and kind of who he was as a player. And and we saw it a lot last week against Chicago. He loves that move. So if from this vantage point, so he's on the right side, but from our vantage point, he's on the left. Whatever side he is, he loves flashing that inside hand, trying to get the tackle to throw his hands in response to him declaring his, and then him dipping underneath those hands, bending, ripping through, and then flattening to the quarterback. And we saw last week how Darnell Wright and the Bears second string tackle with their NFL size, length, and strength were able to just keep him off kilter a little bit and not let him flatten clean to the quarterback. So what do you do if you're primarily an outside edge rusher or an outside worker in terms of an edge rusher? If you like turning the arc, if you like turning the corner, if your game is predicated on juice and bend and athleticism, what do you need to do? You need to develop more of an inside move, which he did in this game. Again, this is one small time, but what's nice about this, right? So you see Broderick Jones, first of all, number 77. You see Broderick Jones, watch him get out of his stance. Bang, he's cooking. Good first step, good first initial kick step. And you see Solomon. What do you get? You get that outside rush. Actually, you see him throw. that first hand. He loves to do that and then dip and bend around the outside. He'll rip and he'll try and turn that corner. But him being able to feel, okay, I can't get by this guy. I can't turn and rip and get around. I can't flatten and get around him with his positioning. So what does he do? Look at this hand on the inside. Again, it's really nice that Solomon has the white gloves and the white sleeves against the black Steeler jersey, so you can see that hand placement. Look at the hand placement right underneath the arm, right underneath the armpit of the right tackle, Broderick Jones. Watch him get that in there. He knows he can't turn the corner. He feels that he can't turn the corner, so pries him back open inside and gets right down on Fields. Forces a quick underneath throw. Kendall Williamson helps force the pass breakup. This is really nice to see from Javon Solomon because his game is all predicated upon athleticism and bend and moves and turning that outside corner. Now, what's nice, and I've noted this about him, he understands pass rush plan and he understands moves and setups. He understands throwing this move in the first and second quarter or doing it consistently and then showing it again in the third or fourth quarter and doing something different. So he understands that nature of kind of playing with a right tackle and messing with them a little bit. So when you have that type of cerebral mentality, that's usually a good sign. My biggest thing again was he's just under 6'1". He's only 246 pounds. Can he develop that secondary move? Because we know what his primary is. It's that outside rush. Can he go through dudes? Can he go speed to power and go through somebody's chest or through somebody's face? Or I should say, can he have an inside move? Is it, feeling that outside and a spin move back inside? Is it a rip or a stab back inside like this, sell up field and then dart back inside? Whatever it is, can he develop a secondary and or third move? How can he transition them together? And what's nice about this, again, is he feels he's trying to go upfield, can't get it, so he pops back inside. Or this also could be he was planning this from the get-go, and he's selling upfield, and then he pops back inside. Either way, it's huge for his development in terms of what he can be as a rookie, because if he can win more on the inside, it then opens up the outside rush, which is his bread and butter, and it helps him a little bit more. If the threat of the inside is there against offensive tackles, they have to respect it a little bit more, and it opens up the outside rush for him to turn the corner and run the arc a little bit. Or even if they don't respect it, fine. And then guys are going to open themselves up. Like you can see Broderick Jones here, like he's selling out like for this outside. He's expecting Solomon to continue around the corner. He's got his hands on him, and Broderick Jones is just expecting, all right, I got my hands on him. I'm latched. I'm just going to ride him around the pocket, and it's the end of the day. But Solomon feels that. Really good hand placement again, and then you look at the size difference. This is where being shorter is going to help a little bit because he's got the leverage advantage. Low man wins. You hear that phrase all the time. Gets underneath, pries him open, boom, rips through, bears down. Nice play by Mr. Javon Solomon. One that, again, got me really, really, really excited. Oh, wow, what a question from Time. Ignoring potential. Who's the better defensive end today, Solomon or Kingsley? Ooh, Kingsley had a lot of good rushes. I'm going to say Javon Solomon. Just because I think he understands pass rush plan a little bit more. I think Kingsley already has a bit more of a well-rounded moveset in terms of being able to like win inside a little bit as well, in addition to going outside. But I'm going to say Javon Solomon. That's a really good question. Yeah, I'm gonna lean Solomon on that one. All right, this one, 4th down stop. I think everybody kind of knows this play from this game. I just wanted to highlight a couple aspects of it. Really Jamarcus Ingram here in terms of why this worked. So this is modern day triple option football. We talk about kind of what the RPO game is here, and we'll show you on the snap. So when I say modern day triple option, it's because you have 3 options. So the first option here is for Fields to hand off this ball. The second option is for Fields to keep this ball and run it himself. The third option is for Fields to throw this ball to the bubble out here, the bubble screen, I should say. So what Fields is doing first is he is reading this end man on the line of scrimmage, typical read option stuff, right? Cameron Cline, who actually has had a pretty decent preseason versus the run and as a pass rusher. Cameron Cline, I think, is somebody who's made that edge conversation a little interesting. Like if you wanted to tell me that you think Cameron Cline should be edge 5 and Smoot should be out and King and Solomon should be edge 4, I wouldn't think you're completely crazy. Cameron Cline's kind of played himself pretty well. Again, it's been against 2s and 3s and 4s, but he's had some nice reps. So this is Cameron Cline here. You're going to get that surf technique from Cameron Cline. So he breaks down, he muddies this a little bit, right? So what Fields is doing is he's trying to read Cameron Cline. If Cline sells out versus the run, Fields is keeping it. If Cline stays outside, Fields is handing it off, and that's that. But you get that surf technique from Cameron Cline, who kind of muddies it a little bit. And if you notice, if he would have handed it off, it looks like the running back probably gets the first down, but that's a conversation for another time. So that's the first piece, right? Fields. Okay. Now, the second piece is the gap exchange between Cline and Mr. Joe Andreessen, Buffalo Joe. So he's coming down on this gap, which means Andreessen is going to flow over the top. And to kind of put that in perspective for you, let me go to this end zone angle, which again puts that surf technique from Cameron Cline off the left edge into position, right? So if you look at this, Cline's going to come here, Andreessen's going to come here. It's a common way teams deal with the read option. I feel like Buffalo probably anticipated this coming. They saw it. They were ready for it just based on how they played it, which is nice for them. So here comes Cline. Andreessen comes around. You'll watch Cameron Cline slow play this a little bit. Again, that surf technique, he's not completely selling out. And because he's not completely selling out, this is what causes Andreessen to kind of take the angle that he does where he shaves it close to Cline. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the sideline angle because I just wanted to highlight that play from Cline and the gap exchange between Cline and Andreessen. Now, here we go. Not to knock anything the Bills do here or even knock Fields. Throw the bubble. This is probably a first down if he throws the football. I don't want to say probably just because you never know. Maybe the guy drops it, or maybe, Hardy just decides to run through this guy's face and he blows it up. You never know. There's no guarantees on something that's a hypothetical or a theory, but throw the bubble. You got one-on-one here. Here's the first down marker. The first down line is the 12. He's going to catch the ball here, and all he needs to do is get right here, and it's probably a first down. Or if Hardy plays it on the outside, maybe he cuts inside. One of these guys make the tackle, but guys still probably getting to here somewhere in that area. So all Fields needs to do is throw this ball, and it's probably a first down for the Steelers. But he doesn't throw it. I understand him not handing the ball off because Cline muddies it a little bit. Like even just watching Cameron Cline here, watch him come off the edge. Like even with us watching it, he comes off the line and then he fires his feet again. That surf technique, you're kind of like, is he crashing? Is he staying? And then again, if you're Justin Fields, the athlete that you are, oh, bro, you're staying here. I can beat you to the edge. I'm golden. I'm keeping the ball. I understand that. But once he starts taking off, this is guaranteed. I feel like this is guaranteed. Throw the bubble, right? He doesn't. He keeps it. Fine. Understandable. This is where this play gets made by Mr. Jamarcus Ingram. So you've got the tight end here who is going to be responsible for blocking Jamarcus Ingram. I don't know if he fakes like he's going to block, like the tempo of it. I don't know if he's supposed to go out and just block Jamarcus Ingram right away. I would think he's supposed to, but the way he turns and looks at Andreessen and then pops back outside, I feel like he's trying to mislead Ingram and try and get him to cut in a little bit so he can set up a better angle. Like, I don't know if that's supposed to be a decoy. My thought is he should be going immediately to the apex player, which is Jamarcus Ingram, but he doesn't, which is fine for the Bills. Ingram plays through this outside shoulder, and I know Andreessen is the one that everyone's focused on, and I get it, right? Here's Andreessen. Watch him just shoot or get shot out of a cannon, bang, and close down real fast, right? But his angle gets made right because of Jamarcus Ingram, which is why I have him highlighted. He plays through the outside shoulder of the tight end, and this is what forces Fields to have to bubble out. Instead of having a direct line to that first down, Ingram strings this play out and forces Fields to actually have to retreat and leads him into Andreessen. And then the other nice aspect of this play, you'll see another defender coming from here, but watch how the defense just swarms. They were doing this all game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you're going to get a ninth defender from over here. There's 9 Bills players around this ball at the end. That's nice. That's good swarming to the football, especially from dudes who are trying to make the squad. Like, that's good effort and a sense of urgency from a defense. So a nice play from Andreessen. Cameron Cline kind of muddying it a little bit with his surf technique off the edge. But again, I think a really, really good play from Jamarcus Ingram in the slot. Jamarcus Ingram, another dude, similar to Daequan Hardy. Ingram was playing on the outside this year. He got his start really as a slot corner with this Bills squad, plays a lot of special teams reps. Hardy and Ingram giving you both inside, outside versatility is a nice piece. And then the physicality and the mentality that Ingram plays with, it just fits so well as an apex defender, just with the tackling and the hitting and the straight line tenacity and violence that he plays with. Again, just watch him play through that shoulder, right through, takes the angle, knows his help is there, wants to turn it back inside. That's a good job from Mr. Jamarcus Ingram. So again, shout out to Andreessen, but I think this is a really good play from Jamarcus Ingram. Again, taking advantage of the Steelers' mistakes, which they had several on that play. Let us go to the other side of the ball and take a look at some offensive pieces for the Buffalo Bills. But before we do that, I want to pull up the second graphic from our partners at BetUS. Again, BetUS, fastest payouts in the industry. Let me drop the banner there. BetUS, fastest payouts in the industry. Currently, BetUS is offering a 125% deposit match on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Fast and easy deposit and withdrawal process. You can check out the BetUS link in the episode description below here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you're listening to this show on. 24/7 personalized service, 365 days a year, live wagering on all major games. You can get 10% back on your net losses twice a year, and BetUS also can give you your very own personal account manager. Very nice. As we transition to the offensive side of the ball, mentioned that turf toe injury for Curtis Samuel earlier, and we read the breakdown from Mr. Kyle Trimble at Banged Up Bills. We've got 2 here, kind of the over-under for receiving yards for Curtis Samuel at 625.5, but then also the receiving touchdowns, over 4.5 and under 4.5. The turf toe injury, I think, muddies it a little bit in terms of his usage and what he is. I feel like it's still a safe bet to smash the over on his receiving yards. I think he's a guy that looks to be getting scheme touches and manufactured touches in Joe Brady's offense. So I am looking to hit that over in terms of his receiving yards for Curtis Samuel. Touchdowns, I think, is a little murky for him. I don't know how much low red zone work he's going to get, considering you've got Kincaid, you've got Coleman, you've got Ray Davis, you've got James Cook, you've got Dawson Knox, and then you've got Josh Allen, who's his own touchdown vulture in his own right. I think the touchdowns, there's only so many to go around. I'm going to go under 4.5 because I could see Curtis. I really could see Samuel be in like 3 to 6 touchdowns or 3 to 5 touchdowns. So I think 4.5 is a really good line. I'm going to say under 4.5 touchdowns for Curtis Samuel, but I'm going to say over the 625.5 receiving yards for Mr. Samuel. And again, I'm bringing that up because one of the players we're going to talk about in this next aspect of the show is Mr. Tyrell Shavers, who plays the wide receiver position. And again, with the injury to MBS, the injury to Curtis Samuel, just what does that mean for this position grouping in terms of how many do they keep and what they do and so on and so forth. So let us go to the other side of the ball. Boom, boom. Actually, this first play. Where's the first play I want to show? There's some tight end stuff. Mr. Tyrell Shavers. I wanted to show him here and lead off with him, tie him into the wide receiver conversation. Again, it was a performance from the periphery for the Bills in this game where I find it hard to kind of fault most of them, given Trubisky wasn't playing great. Then he gets banged up, and DiNucci comes in, and he does not know the playbook. He does not know the passing offense. Oh, sorry, I should probably add this film to the stage instead of just sitting here talking about it. I always forget to do that. So it's hard for me to, again, and I think for a lot of people here, right, like evaluate the wide receiver position. Who should be wide receiver 5? Who should be wide receiver 6? If MBS is banged up, who should replace him as wide receiver 5? Do you still keep 6 wide receivers? Who are they? If Curtis Samuel and MBS are both banged up, who are the 2 receivers that take their spot? Because we haven't seen a lot from a pass catching standpoint for the receivers. But what's nice for Tyrell Shavers is you're going to get the special teams value. And what he showed as a blocker in this game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, who just really is going to endear him to Sean McDermott and this coaching staff. And this isn't just like, oh, of course, McDermott's going to pick the receiver who run blocks well. But Shavers, just with his size, I think is a very interesting conversation starter overall. So again, wide receiver has been a mess for this team in the preseason because of the target opportunities or lack thereof with the passing offense, because the QB play hasn't been ideal, which makes it hard to evaluate the wide receiver spot in the wide receiver competition. MVS in general has been inconsistent, which muddies the wide receiver 5 and beyond spot. And now he's injured. So if you take all that in conjunction with itself or together, were they going to keep 5 or 6 wide receivers initially? If MVS misses time, do they keep 5 or do they keep 6? Like, how does that all coalesce into one another? If everybody was fine and healthy and dandy, right? Were they going to keep 5 or were they going to keep 6? If they were going to keep 5, was MVS the 5th or was he not? And now with him banged up, it gets even muddier. I think if he's banged up, I think they only keep 5, given the lack of showing out we've seen at the position, unless they're just seeing something in practice that isn't really being noted. So even if MVS is healthy, I feel like they might only still keep 5 just because who's really shown out. But if it is somebody to be wide receiver 6 or wide receiver 5 to replace MVS, I think Tyrell Shavers has kind of made a case a little bit with what he's done in camp and some of the blocking that I'm going to show you here. I will not rule out KJ Hamler or even Andy Isabella, but Shavers has seen plenty of special teams reps and he's offered the offense some value again with his blocking. Now, this is where you can kind of play either side of the argument. With the body types they've added to the wide receiver room this year, you can make a case for and against Tyrell Shavers. You could say that he's in line with the Keon Colemans and the Mac Hollinses of the world in terms of size and frame and who they are. For those who don't know, Mr. Tyrell Shavers, where is he? I want to get the official thing and make sure I'm not talking out of my... Yeah, that's what I thought. 6'6", 211 pounds, 4 special team snaps in week 1 against Chicago, 9 in week 2 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So again, 6'6", 211 pounds is what he's listed at. So if you keep him, do you go in line with that kind of bigger body type, size and frame at wide receiver? Or maybe they don't want another kind of like for like in that room. Maybe they want more of a pure speed guy like a KJ Hamler. Maybe they want someone with a little more juice and jitterbug to their game like Andy Isabella, who also has some speed as well. So you can kind of make a case for and against him. But at the end of the day, some really nice run blocking reps, which I know isn't sexy and isn't fun. Well, one of these I think is a really sexy run block, but we'll kind of take a peek. So here's Shavers. He came in motion from here. And we're going to get a nice run block here on this duo run. Watch the safety come off the edge and watch Shavers just envelop him. Bang. Not only does he get into him, again, watch it. This is a pure like hammer and nail situation. This safety is coming off the edge. He's coming downhill. Watch Shavers match him. He's not just, okay, cool, I'm going to be the nail, you be the hammer. I'll just kind of catch him. We'll see what happens. I'll just get in your way a little bit. Watch Shavers dip his head and shoulder and get his body into this safety. He gets lower than the safety. If you notice there, again, what did we talk about earlier with Solomon getting through Broderick Jones on the inside, right? Low man wins. Look at the head position. Look how much lower he is. And watch him, boom. You see him turn that man upright. Watch him in real time get underneath the safety. The safety goes upright. He doesn't go through Shavers. He gets put up. So his momentum is taken away because instead of going through, he gets stood up. So one, that's a really good impact block from Shavers to get underneath. And also look at the footwork too of Shavers. Watch Shavers not get knocked back. Here's his feet. He doesn't get knocked back this way and then kind of stabilizes himself and anchors a little bit. He takes the fight to this safety and steps through him. So he takes the safety up, steps through him, and then watch hand placement outside a little bit. Okay, you don't want your hand outside the frame. What are you going to do about it? Gets that hand inside a little bit more towards kind of the armpit a little bit, and just watch him keep working and keep working. Doesn't detach. Just a good physical block from Tyrell Shavers. And this is not a concept the Bills run all the time. This is a duo run. They love this. They love to take that wide receiver, whether it was Trent Sherfield or Gabe Davis or Khalil Shakir, or it might be Curtis Samuel, or it could be Mac Hollins. I guess it could be Keon, but I don't really see that role for him. They love to take these bigger body wide receivers on this concept, and sometimes you will see them insert between the tight end of the right tackle. Sometimes you'll see what he did here and kind of mash down on whoever's coming from the outside there. This is a good block. Physical at the impact point, at the collision point, stalls his man, takes his momentum, knocks him upright, knocks him back, and then takes him out and maintains contact throughout the way. Like, he completely takes that dude out of the play. This one is the best one. Like, and a good comment here from Charles saying, still think Shavers can be an elite gunner on punt returns. Absolutely. He had a good, he kind of got mucked up a little bit, but then he had a nice finish on a punt coverage rep. Yeah, and that's also part of it too, right? If your wide receiver 5 and wide receiver 6 can offer, you're just looking for some value as you get to the bottom of your depth chart, right? Not everyone's team. I don't even say everyone's team, unless you're the friggin' Packers, who have like 4 and 5 really good wide receivers. Once you get to like wide receiver 4 and 5 and 6 on most teams, you're just looking for some kind of value and some kind of usefulness. If you have a wide receiver 5 or a wide receiver 6 that offers you good special teams value and also can function as a run blocker like this, and then offers some size, maybe in some jump ball scenarios or some down the field aspect as a pass catcher, I think that's a little more limited. But even if it's just the value of a good run blocker and special teams value, that's good for the bottom of your depth chart at the wide receiver spot. This one is beautiful. Watch the block that he lays on this safety here. He lights this dude up. This is Jalen Elliott, number 34. Just, I really kind of just wanted to, if I can only pick one play from this game to watch, it would be this one. Bang. Oof. Crushes him. That's a hit stick type block. Bang. And again, what do you see? What do you see from this block again? Like we saw on the previous one, right? Not letting the fight get taken to him, not just being the nail and letting the defender be the hammer. He gets low. Again, low man wins. Look, it's kind of hard to see because McKitty's in the way, but look at the crown of their helmets. The black and gold is over the blue, white, and red. That's because Shavers is under him. And to get under a defender like that, again, if you're Tyrell Shavers, who's listed at 6'6", that's not an easy thing to do. And just boom, lowers the boom on that safety. We'll watch from the other end zone angle too, because that's always fun. Here's Shavers again. Bang. Similar look again on this run as the previous play. Watch him step forward. This is also nice too, right? Because he walks up and he sees this safety pre-snap already peeking inside. So instead of on the last rep, we saw the safety came late and kind of came this way on Shavers. This time, his man is threatening to go inside on the snap. So watch Shavers meet him and step forward. Because if he doesn't do that and he allows this man to get that inside, this is going to jack up Ray Davis on this dual run. Davis is trying to get upfield. He's trying to read that front side, play side linebacker, and then go off of that. If this safety gets in here, it can stop the play before it gets started. He has the opportunity to kind of meet Davis at the mesh point in the backfield, and then maybe you're hoping Davis can step and juke and bounce right here, but then the corner has the opportunity to meet here. So then Davis would have to make 2 guys miss, and then you start to get kind of into an unfortunate situation. Shavers doesn't let that happen. Oh, I forgot where I was. Oh, that's a good image. So watch Shavers step up, meets that man, takes the fight to him, and again, what do we see? Like I talked about, who's high, who's low. Boom. Crushed. Then I sort of move from Ray Davis on the outside, and then he draws the flag there. Just a really nice block from Tyrell Shavers. We're watching in real time. One more from this end zone angle. Bang. Oof. That's pretty. That's very, 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 very pretty. And as How It's Done 123 says, this helps his case greatly. Absolutely. Again, you're just trying to find some semblance of value in these depth guys, right? Your wide receiver 5, your wide receiver 6, what can you offer? Cool. You're a good run blocker and a willing run blocker. You offer some physicality and you play special teams. For most, that's a pretty good case. Want to go to the tight end conversation. So I think, and who asked this question earlier? I pulled it up at the time. Scott Blakely said, any chance we get 5 wide receivers, 4 tight ends? I think you could, depending on, even if MVS is healthy, I think there was a chance they might only keep 5 wide receivers because no one was really declaring. With Shavers playing like he did, I think it could increase the odds if MVS is healthy that you keep 6 wide receivers and Shavers is the 6th because of what he offers on special teams. So I feel like Shavers has made a good case as a riser to kind of make this team either in replacing MVS or being wide receiver 6. If MVS is out, if he gets cut, if he gets put on IR, I think there is a chance you could see 5 wide receivers and 4 tight ends. If you don't see 4 tight ends, or also let's bake into that, right? Whatever happens with Quentin Morris, like we talked about, we read that injury earlier from Kyle Trimble from banged up Bills. What that timeline looks like. We'll see a good diagnosis. Good comment here from Jamal saying you need good backups. Absolutely. You're looking for functionality and value in your backups, right? Nobody's sitting on a ton of all pros as their backups, unless you're like the 49ers who figure out a way to get studs every year and just turn anybody on their defensive line into a velociraptor. Quentin Morris, we'll see what happens with his injury diagnosis and evaluation going forward. But like we talked about earlier, he has a good all-around skill set, especially for a tight end 3. He can get vertical. He can function as a pass catcher, but he also can mash as a run blocker on safeties, on linebackers, on edges. Like he gives you some physicality in addition to the pass catching piece, right? So being able to live in the run blocking, pass catching world as a tight end 3 behind Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, Quentin Morris provides you really good value. If Morris is out and the case becomes who is tight end 3, you have 2 options. You've got Trey McKitty and you've got Zach Davidson. Shout out to Joe Marino for, when were we DMing? Yesterday, and kind of having this conversation in terms of, Trey McKitty versus Zach Davidson as a backup. What you really have between the two of them is just siloed roles and skill sets versus the all-around nature of what Quentin Morris would be. Trey McKitty is in that blocking type of mold of a tight end, and Zach Davidson is in more of the pass-catching mold of a tight end. He's basically like a big receiver in a tight end's type of body, although he is a willing blocker. He's just not as good of a blocker as Trey McKitty. And I wanted to pull 2 of these plays that are representative of their skill sets. This first one is for Mr. Trey McKitty. Oh, and as Daniel says, couldn't Gilliam also be tight end depth? Absolutely. He could factor in there as well. As your, that fullback, H-back, tight end type of role. He's not going to function, I think, as your straight up inline tight end, which is what Morris could offer you, which is what McKitty could offer you. Dawson Knox offers you. I don't think Davidson really offers it because of what he is at the point of attack. So it's a little bit of a different piece. I guess Gilliam, in a worst case, if it's Gilliam or Davidson as your inline tight end, I'll take Gilliam. But Gilliam is more of like an H-back tight end than pure inline tight end. So that factors into it a little bit, but sure, like Gilliam 100% could be factored into the tight end depth, especially if you want to hip them off from kind of condensed formations or heavier personnel groupings, you could see that. Good comment there, Daniel. Well done. I completely forgot about Gilliam. So let's watch this play from Trey McKitty. This is really nice. This is him against a legitimate defensive lineman. Pull up the weight here against Mr. DeMarvin Leal from the University of Texas A&M, listed at 290 pounds. So again, a legitimate defensive lineman that Trey McKitty is going against. He's going to get some chip help here from Quentin Morris. Shout out to Quentin Morris. So he doesn't start this initially all by himself. We get a good chip that helps a little bit, right? That chip kind of takes some of that momentum from 98, jacks him up a little bit. But what's nice here is watch this. So again, we get some nice color variation. Shout out to Leal with the yellow glove and the yellow arm sleeve. Shows up well. He gets that arm underneath. He's trying to hook that arm and then pull himself through that outside shoulder of Trey McKitty. McKitty feels that. And as Leal tries to club himself through, so he's trying to club himself and pull himself through that outside shoulder. Watch McKitty just move his feet and look how he detaches that right arm. He pulls that right arm that Leal was trying to like hook and grab. He takes it while he's moving his feet and then tries to refit it. Okay. Now he's not in a great position again. Why? Hand on the back, clear as day in front of the official. That's an easy way to kind of get yourself flagged because your hands are outside the frame. You're on the back. Now, even though they don't call that holding when defenders are trying to rip through, if you are off the frame and basically like bear hugging a dude's neck, you're going to start to get called for holding. So it's kind of messy right now, right? Watch him just keep his feet moving, and that is what the key is. His hands are not in great position, but the hands control, the feet are what drive. The feet are what allow you to kind of displace somebody or move somebody. So this is a really nice recovery from Trey McKitty, whose hands get a little wild. Watch him just move the feet, move the feet, move the feet. Everything there is him moving his feet to stay in front of a guy who's got him by a considerable amount of weight. And even though he gets that chip help from Quentin Morris, he's essentially one-on-one in pass pro versus a second-team defensive lineman. That's a nice job of battling for Trey McKitty. That's what he offers you. Zach Davidson is not offering you this. And I don't say that as a knock. It's just the silo, skill set that they operate in. Again, feel that arm. Okay, let me move my feet. This is it right here, right? Instead of allowing him to turn this way and McKitty gets kind of put on the back foot, or him grabbing him here and turning him and getting called for the cold, watch him just move his feet and stay in front of the man. Use his feet to stay in front of his man. You're just trying to do whatever you can to stay in between the rusher and the quarterback. And that's what he does. Watch him just keep moving his feet. Keep moving your feet. Keep moving your feet. Keep moving your feet. And then he stays on him, pushes him a little bit. That's a nice job. That's a nice job from Trey McKitty. Again, gets the chip help from Quentin Morris, but is one-on-one in pass pro against a defensive lineman for a good chunk of time. So solid job there from Mr. Trey McKitty. RJ says it really doesn't help that all these position groups that they needed to be figured out in camp, every single one is in a massive run of injuries: safety, wide receiver, and linebacker. 100%. It's frustrating to say the least. And especially too, because it's not like, I don't want anybody to be hurt long-term, but it's not cut and dry. It's not like, well, so-and-so is done for the year, so let's replace him with this. It's a whole bunch of like week-to-week type of guys, which could mean anything. And there are a lot of soft muscle stuff, so you're waiting to see how they develop. Can they get back to 100%? How much time off do they need? How much can it be managed? How long are they truly out for? What percentage can they play at? And how effective will they be? It's just a frustratingly muddied conversation. Sophia says, I don't know. That looks like an obvious hold. I don't know how much I like this. Fair. But again, it's not because he keeps his feet moving. Watch how he doesn't pull. Right here where that hand is, it's going to be a hold if he grabs this jersey and turns him. But because he keeps his feet moving, it doesn't get called. You see? That's the key point. Right here. Well, not right here, but right here. This is the moment of truth. He keeps moving this way to stay in front of his man because he keeps moving his feet. And then he also takes this inside hand. You can't see it from this angle, but he's got it clamped on the pec. Not on the 8, but on the pec underneath there. And he's using that to drive. That's why it's not a hold. He's not holding him with that outside hand. He moves his feet to stay in between. Again, it's ugly overall. It's ugly to start, but that's a recovery against a dude that has you outweighed and probably would have a matchup advantage. He just keeps moving his feet. Just keep moving your feet. See? He doesn't use his hands to win the rep. He doesn't grab. He doesn't hold. He keeps moving the feet and stays in between his man and the quarterback. Shuffle, shuffle, drive. See? That's the difference. That's why it's not called a hold. Because he keeps right here, keeps moving the feet, keeps moving the feet. He doesn't get into a spot where he's like leaning or he's caught off balance and then he has to grab and then he has to pull. His hands aren't in great position, but once they're not in great position, he keeps moving with him. Instead of just relying on this to kind of turn him and pull him and yank him down, he uses his feet to stay in between the man and the quarterback. And again, that's taking a rep where you're like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, not panicking and finding a way to still get the job done. So it's not pretty. It's not, man, this is teach tape. But that's some good footwork and a good overall job of understanding the assignment and figuring out a way to get it done. But I like that thought, Sophia. Well done. This last one here is Zach Davidson. No surprise. I feel like if you watch this game, this is a really nice route from Zach Davidson. I wanted to use the circle, but I was going to put it off frame, which annoyed me. I also didn't know what angle to pick this play from. I think this one really worked out. This is that same safety that Tyrell Shavers jacked up earlier, which is ironic. So Mr. Zach Davidson here as the number 2 in this. There's another outside wide receiver, obviously outside. So he's the number 2 on this play. Watch him stem this route inside. His body language, his eyes, his pacing, everything are selling like he's getting upfield or he's running an over, and he feels that safety start to open up and run with him. And once he feels that, puts his foot in the ground, turns him inside out. Good ball from Trubisky. That's a really good throw. That's a really good play from Zach Davidson. Again, good ball from Trubisky, but that's a good route from Zach Davidson. Let's go back a little bit. Stem this thing inside. Whoop. Not the cleanest footwork, but the understanding is there, right? The understanding of leverage and what to do with your man. Sell this route inside, get your man to open up and buy into that deception and buy into that lie, and then turn him. Cuts underneath him. That's actually not a horrible speed turn from Elliott. Again, good ball placement from Trubisky, but that's a nice job from Davidson, who offers you more of a wide receiver type skill set in a tight end's body. Dude just consistently finds ways to get open. Again, a good route. Stem this thing inside. One more time. Let's watch it. Go around the edge rusher. I'm going over. Psych. Foot in the ground. Good job from Zach Davidson. Also not a bad route from, if we watch on the right side of the screen here, Mr. Tyrell Shavers. Watch him get vertical, feeling his man, looks at him, head fake like he's going over, a couple extra steps or 1 or 2, and then pop back out. Decent for him as well. But that's a good job by Zach Davidson. And again, that's the skill set that he offers more of, right? He's going to offer, like I said, more of that wide receiver, pass catcher skill set in a tight end's body. So that's where that conversation goes if you are Quentin Morris. And I think that's really where so much of the roster projection conversation starts to get really interesting with wide receiver, with tight end. How many wide receivers do they keep? How many tight ends do they keep? Is Quentin Morris healthy? Because if Quentin Morris is healthy, I feel like they just keep 3. Because you've got Kincaid, you've got Knox, and then you've got Morris, who gives you a little bit of everything, right? He can run block and he can catch the football. If he's out, do you keep Davidson and McKitty? Davidson gives you some special teams work. So does McKitty, but then they also are more siloed. So what are you looking for in tight end 3? Do you value more of the pass catcher, or do you value more of the run blocker, who can also give you some pass protection, as we showed there? Who do you lean towards based on role, based on skill set? So depending on what they have eyed for that role, if Morris is out, is where it becomes really interesting. And then even with the wide receiver conversation, if MVS is good to go for week 1, do they still keep him? Is he cuttable at this point? Do they replace him with Tyrell Shavers and they still only keep 5? Do they keep MVS and Shavers, or is it MVS and someone else and they keep 6? What are they valuing? That's really what I wanted to get to in this episode with the risers and fallers and the roster projection conversation, just with what we've seen from Shavers, Javon Solomon, Joe Andreessen, McKitty, Davidson, MVS. The other linebackers, I think, are kind of in that fallers conversation as well, just because Spector hasn't really stood out tremendously, and then he's been banged up. Morrow hasn't gotten on the field. Dorian, I already think, is a lock. Deion Jones is shown a couple flashes, but also kind of late and not great, and he's a far cry from prime Deion Jones, which is expected at this point. So I feel like the linebackers, as Joe Andreessen is rising significantly, I feel like the rest of the linebackers are either plateauing or falling, which also helps his case. It really just creates this interesting conversation in terms of risers and fallers and the roster projection. And that's really what I wanted to get into tonight with this episode. Instead of more just like, here's who I think the QBs are going to be, and the running backs and the receivers and the O-line and how many they're going to keep, I wanted to analyze multiple players who are at several positions that I think will be tipping points towards who makes the official 53, who they keep, and then obviously how that influences the practice squad. And I thought the film was a really good way to kind of highlight and diagnose that evaluation piece and that aspect. I'm going to throw up the banner that says Toodle, folks, because we're going to start to wind down. If you have not already, please, 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 and thank you, drop a like on this video. It goes a sincerely long way towards helping myself and the entire team to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. So if you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed this content, or you're just excited for Bills football, please, 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 and thank you, drop a like on this video. Also, I would be remiss if I did not mention One Pie Pizza. This episode, of course, brought to you by my friends and folks at One Pie Pizza. They are the best pizza in Buffalo, New York, to me. Again, I don't say that because they sponsor the show. They sponsor the show because I think they are the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. Sweet sauce pie, cup and char pepperoni, great cheese to sauce ratio, homemade blue cheese, all the initiatives and drives that they do for the city of Buffalo in giving back to the community. Toys for Tots, partnering with Roswell, the SPCA, the Alzheimer's Foundation. They're really good people making really good food. So go get yourself some One Pie Pizza. Treat your taste buds and treat the community potentially at the same exact time. Shout out to my friends and folks at One Pie Pizza. Thank you for the kind words, RJ and Sophia, for in the comments. I see them. I don't pull them up because I think it's corny, especially when I'm riding solo. I don't want to pull up because I'm just solo, and then it's like weird to pull up positive comments for myself, but I see everything nice that comes through, and I sincerely thank you for that. If you're listening on one of the podcasting apps and or platforms, that is cool too. Please rate and review and subscribe to Disguised Coverage on whatever podcasting app or platform you're listening to this show on. If you are here on YouTube, turn on notifications for the Disguised Coverage playlist, subscribe to the Cover One channel, tell your family, friends, and loved ones about this show and about how awesome it is. If you thought it was terrible, that's fine. Tell your enemies and try and ruin their day by making them watch this episode. Again, likes, rates, reviews, subscriptions, word of mouth, all of that kind of stuff. And like I mentioned, this show sponsored by, powered by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. Please gamble responsibly. Thank you very much to BetUS for being part of this broadcast and being part of the Cover One brand this year. And again, check out the BetUS link that it can be found in the episode description, either here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you're listening to this show on. I will be hosting the post game this upcoming Saturday, immediately following the Buffalo Bills game in Week 3 versus the Carolina Panthers. So join me on Saturday for that. Tune in to the Cover One film room with myself and Eric tomorrow, Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. C2L says, how do you become a sponsor? If you are interested in that or you want to know, feel free to DM me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro2_ANT. DM me on Twitter and I can let you know. We can talk about that kind of stuff. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. To everyone who joined me live, thank you very much for the kind words, the back and forth with each other, and the engagement with myself. Thank you to Carl and Scott for your super chats. Thank you very much to Chris Seth for helping produce a bunch of this episode and making the BetUS a lot easier for me to kind of maintain. So major thank you to Chris Seth, who's always behind the scenes for the film room as well. C2L, I don't have an IG. If you want, message in the comments on YouTube and I'll message you back and we can talk that way. I'll give you an email. We can kind of go from there. Appreciate you for that. Again, Godspeed, folks. See you either tomorrow for the film room or Saturday after Bills Panthers, and then again live next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern for another episode of Disguised Coverage. Again, this show sponsored by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. Please gamble responsibly. I'll see you folks when I see you. Godspeed, and as always, go Bills.